imagine compassionate capitalism. Is there such a thing? Could there be such a thing?
Well, it's the most compassionate system I know, by definition.
Your definition being coming from the 1%. Now, I have no problem with you having money. The problem is there's those who are destitute and discontent with their lot in life.
Right, but what is the solution? How if you don't have money now, how are you going to get it? And how do people that have money, in a capitalist society where, people are free to spend their money where they want. Let me finish 1 second. The way a capitalist gets rich is to figure out what the consumers want and give it to them, and do it at a less expensive price, at a better quality. So the way a capitalist gets rich is by enriching everybody else. Why are there lobbyists? Why are lobbyists successful? Because government has power and influence. The problem is the government. If the government couldn't dole out special favors and subsidies, there would be no lobbyists. So what you've got to do is take the power away from government and bring it back to the people.
I think it's the corporations that get greedy and decide that, why we pay someone $8 an hour if we can get someone for 50 cents an hour in India? And that's why we move over, not because of government.
First of all, the corporations are just people. It's people that own stock, right? And if you go back to the 1950s, for example, America paid the highest wages in the world, much higher than we do today. Yet we produced the cheapest stuff. Our products cost less than products produced anywhere else in the world, and so we sold them all around the world. Why? How was it that we could pay the highest wages but produce the lowest cost stuff? It was because we had more capital. We had more capital because we had lower taxes and fewer regulations. So we gave our workers tools and machines to make them more productive. We don't have that anymore. We are not as productive as other countries. That is the problem. But you have to ask yourselves why. How did we have such a huge lead, and how did we blow it? What did we do wrong? And what we did wrong was more government, more rules, more regulations, more taxes that made us less competitive. That's why the jobs are gone. You're not going to bring the poor up by bringing the rich down, right? You don't make the poor richer by making the rich poorer. You need rich people to invest their money to grow the economy, to create the products, to create the businesses, to create the jobs. If you're pursuing a business and you're not making money, that means you're not creating value. The market is telling you to stop. But if you can organize labor, land, and capital and make a profit, the profit tells you you're benefiting society. You're providing, you're making economic use of resources. The only way to get really rich, right, is to share your wealth by investing it. Look, Steve Jobs just passed away. He made billions. How many people here have iPhones in their pockets?
I feel like what you want is...
He's not a humanitarian. He's a businessman. But he enriched the lives of millions of people. If you're going to start a business, if you don't make money, how are you going to employ people? How are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to buy your materials? What I want is I want people like you to be able to start a business. The problem is it's very hard. It's easier today for a young man to start a business in communist China than it is in America, because the government actually leaves you alone more there. There's not as much regulation. There's not as much red tape. There's not as much taxes. And when my grandparents came to this country, they didn't even speak the language. My grandfather started a small carpentry business. There were no rules, regulations, no red tape. If he hired somebody, it was just, you hired him. He just paid him cash at the end of the day. If there was any money left over, he was happy. It was easy. You can succeed in America when my grandparents came here because they didn't have all these roadblocks. I want to eliminate the roadblocks so you can have the same opportunities that he had.
I understand you have to make money, but there's got to be regulations. Because I believe in democracy, but I also believe in regulations. Right. The market has to grow at a sensible rate, right? It cannot grow too fast. If the market grows too fast, it will crash.
See, the regulation we want is the market. That's the regulation that works. When governments try to regulate, it screws it all up. Now let's take a corporation. If a corporation wants to sell a product, it can't sell the product for whatever price it wants. Somebody has to voluntarily buy that product. So the market determines the price of the goods that are being sold. The same thing is with labor. A corporation just can't take advantage of its workers and pay them as little as it wants, because businesses compete with one another to buy labor. People are selling their labor, and so the market is going to set wages. The market is going to set prices. If the government comes in and tries to say, this is the wage that needs to be paid, all they do is end up creating lots of unemployment. They have classes of people that aren't allowed to work. I want limited government, but you're what?
Saying limited to how much? How much? Where does government have a role in the lives of 300 million people?
Government is there to protect property, life, liberty, and that's it.
And
yes,
that's it.
It's not there to redistribute wealth. It's not there when you have government do that. It doesn't work.
If you're taking the power away from government, who are you trying to give it to? If you're trying to destroy
all of us, no. If you take government out of it, you don't have to worry about a corporation. All they can do is get you to voluntarily give them your money for their products. You don't have to fear a business. You fear government. Government has power over you. Businesses don't. All businesses can do is offer you services and products.
The only reason you want to take money away from the federal government is to steal the rest of the money that you didn't steal already.
No, the federal government is the one that's stealing money from the people who earned it. I want to leave the money with the people who earned it, and they can use it to grow the economy, to create the jobs.
There's corporations that are running our economy.
Well, that's the problem. They shouldn't be.
And they're running our government.
But why are they? Because the government has the power.
It's crony capitalism. It's not capitalism.
Yes, exactly. You got it. We got it because government gave it to them. We got to take it back We got to take the power away from government so they can't give it out to their friends in banks or corporations. We want the corporations to get money who earn it without any political connections, without any special subsidies. We want them to earn the money because they produce the products and the services that we want at the prices that we want to pay. And in the process, they create jobs. I am giving the government half of what I earn. You think they should take more?
I think we should get rid of the Bush tax cuts.
But that means I would be paying more than half of what I earned to government.
There's no way you can cut all the expenses you want without increasing revenue. There's no way to fix this problem.
If you raise my taxes, maybe I'll just decide to sell my business and fire 150 people. Why should I work for free?
If you've got 20,000 clients, you're doing much better than anyone else here.
But why should I? Wait, do you think, wait, hold on.
You want to share your success.
Do you think I should work for you or for myself?
Well, I'm like you. I'm an entrepreneur. I want you to work for yourself.
Right, but if the government...
But you started out with 2 clients before you had 20,000. You should want to help the next guy.
I am helping the next guy. I'm helping them. I'm helping my clients by giving them services that they want. I'm employing 150 people. How many people do you employ?
I'm in the mortgage business. I wish I employed 150 people.
Well, let's stop. Well, go do it.
The problem is that
I'm doing it. I'm doing my share. Why aren't you doing yours?
Unregulated.
And in fact, I'm probably paying more income taxes than everybody around me combined. So I'm paying more than my fair share right now. And you're talking about the poor students. Hey, I'm the one that wants to get rid of all these student loans. I don't want the government loaning money to kids to go to college. I don't want them guaranteeing. Nobody. I want tuitions to come down because
it's cheaper for me to go to college in New Zealand than for me to stay here and go to college.
But you know what? If the government stopped subsidizing student loans, the universities would have to slash the prices, and then you can afford to go. You wouldn't need a loan.
Okay. Thank you for the answer.
Corporations are nothing to fear. All they can do is offer you a product or a service. It's up to you whether or not you want to buy it. They can offer you a job. You don't have to take it. You can work for somebody else. You can work for yourself. You don't have to fear a business
job out there.
Well, then aren't you glad the corporation is there to give you one because there's nothing better out there?
Yeah. Yes, why not? That makes sense.
No, how are they taking away jobs? Where do you think jobs come from?
When they crashed the economy,
no, but it was crashed because
everybody started doing job cuts. All these corporations were doing job cuts. Even Wall Street.
That's my question, though. Where did jobs come from in the first place?
Money they buy. That's where jobs come from.
No, they don't come from consumers. Where do those consumers get the money? Where do the consumers get the money?
They get the money from working.
Yeah, so the jobs come first, the goods come second.
My question is, where does the 1% fit in the picture of the crisis that we just went through? So you're saying that it's all the fault of the government. What's their role?
My point is, look, if taking money away from the 1% to suspend it is going to hurt the economy. We need capital to grow the economy. We need investments. We need savings. We need production. Right. We need more machines. We need more factories.
What role did Wall Street play in this crisis in your
No, they played a big role. Wall Street drank the alcohol that the Federal Reserve poured. But if there was no Fed pouring the alcohol, if Fannie and Freddie weren't guaranteeing all these mortgages, Wall Street wouldn't have originated them. So it was Wall Street working with government. But the source of the problem was government.
Peter, let's talk. What is the solution? These poor children are in the cold. If your children in this position, would you like to see your children in this condition?
The solution,
look at the wind blowing.
The solution is freedom, capitalism, liberty, the Constitution. That's what we need. Free people can succeed. They can prosper. If the government just gets out of the way and lets it happen.
You would not have come here and done this today unless you were a go-getter. And I guarantee you would have been go-getting with a higher tax rate on you, just as you are now. No. You would have made your dad proud. You would have shown how tough you are. You would have been the big guy on the block right now. And we would have helped you do it. But we would also have taken some of the money from you and spread it around, unlike what's going on.
But here's the problem. The money that you take from me is the money I would use to grow the economy. Any money that's taken from me and said... But no, that's
not what you're doing. You're gambling.
No.
You're gambling. This is not 1960 when we're investing in GM, and GM is good for whatever it's good for. GM is good for the United States. That's not it anymore.
I'm not gambling. I say I'm just helping my clients invest money. Wall Street gambles with money from the Federal Reserve. They're the ones that are trading and proprietary trading.
Well,
I don't do that. But I agree.
I
agree that because of the Fed and because of the government, money that should be invested is being gambled instead. That is the problem. Washington is helping Wall Street bleed Main Street dry.
Cronies like Bill Clinton, who got rid of Glass-Steagall, with corporations and the power of money behind him, are what drives you guys. It's a chicken and egg, and an egg and a chicken.
Right. But it's not. But remember, the money that grows the economy is the money that isn't spent. It's savings that drives economic growth. And when you tax the businessman, you're taxing his savings, you're diminishing his ability to grow the economy, to grow his business, and you're sending money to Washington where it's squandered on consumption and government bureaucracy. That's what's destroying the country. You know what the richest county is now in the United States? Washington County. It's now wealthier than Silicon Valley. Because it's all the money going to the bureaucrats. They're raising their pay. All the lobbyists are getting rich because the government is doling out all these favors. Take away the power of government, and you bring the power back to the people.
Increased in the last 5 years. Is your income going up or going down in the last 5 years? How much money do you make, and is it increasing?
I think it's increasing, but what's your point? Yeah.
Why is everyone else's annual income stagnating?
Because, a lot of it is because of inflation that the Federal Reserve creates to prop up failing banks or to prop up the government to pay for the social welfare state. But the reason that the middle class is suffering is because the government is destroying the economy. Capitalism benefits most the middle class and the lower class, but we don't have it anymore. That's the problem. Before the government got involved in healthcare, there was much more access and it was much less expensive. And what happened was, Ron Paul pointed out that when he was a doctor a long time ago, doctors took care of the poor for free. Nobody died if they were sick. The problem is the government has run up the cost of healthcare so much through the tax code, through Medicare, through Medicaid. Anything the government touches, it ruins. It drives up the price. It drives down the quality. I said, look, if there's a bank that is going to fail, you let it fail. You let the shareholders lose money. Let the bondholders lose money. Because if you bail them out now, it's a moral hazard, and we're just going to get more of that bad behavior in the future. Capitalism means private losses and private profits. It doesn't mean private profits and socialized losses.
Why we believe there's a conflict of interest between the interests of Wall Street and the Fed.
Well, the problem is the banks are keeping interest rates artificially low to prop up the speculative activity on Wall Street. What we actually need in this country is higher interest rates, not lower interest rates, because that'll take the money out of Wall Street, put it back on Main Street, businessmen can't borrow money at these low interest rates. It's all going to the government through guaranteed debt, through the treasury market, through the corporate bond market. There's no real capital available for Main Street, but if we let interest rates go up, number one, people will stop spending and start saving again because they can get a decent interest rate on their savings, and there'll be more capital on Main Street to fund new businesses, to produce things here, to hire people here. But of course, if we want to do all that, we need to get the government to repeal a lot of the rules and regulations that have artificially increased the cost of doing business and hiring people in this country. So you think that I should pay 70% of my income above $2 million in tax?
$2 million a year?
Yes. Do you
I
think
your next dollar should be taxed at 74%?
Okay, so if that's the deal, you know what I would do? Once my income got to $2 million, I would stop working for the year. I would furlough my employees and say, you know what? I've made my limit. I'm not going to work for 30 cents on the dollar. I'm playing golf. I'm going fishing. I'll see you next February. How about that?
How come that didn't apply in the 1970s and 1960s?
Because nobody paid those taxes back then. You know how many? I would much rather.
The economy was booming when the effective tax.
Because no one paid those high taxes. What do you think the banks do with the money? They loan it out to businesses. Where do you think credit comes from? If you take money away from the people who earn it and save it and send it to Washington, it's going to get squandered, and you're going to destroy the incentives to grow the economy.
Lowered the tax rates in the 1980s, and they effectively went down. You see a decline you see an increase in the national debt, and you see a decline in the middle class.
No, but that's because the government kept spending money. You can't blame the problems on the tax cuts.
I know.
You got to blame.
We should spend money on the homeless and the poor and the sick. We should.
That's not where the money was going. As a member of the 1%, what do you think? Do you think your taxes should be raised?
Yes, I do.
Well, I mean,
for a long time, you know what happened?
what percent of your income do you pay in taxes?
10%.
All right, well, you're not in the 1% because I'm paying 50%. So you're only paying 10% in taxes?
It has to do with how you invest your money, doesn't it?
Well, I'm not paying 10%. I'm paying 50. All right, well, how would you like to pay 50% like me?
I would.
Oh, really? Well, then why not write a bigger check when you pay your taxes instead of paying 10%?
I would be very, I think.
Well, no one's stopping you from paying more taxes.
They didn't know that the Fed is a lot of the problem, printing the money out of thin air backed by nothing.
The Fed is a big part of the problem. And in fact, if it wasn't for the Fed, the government couldn't spend all this money because the Fed is buying up all these bonds, which is allowing the government to plunge the people deeper into debt and is preventing the economy from correcting itself. We have got serious structural economic problems, and we're only making them worse. And the Fed is helping the government make it worse by buying up all those bonds. Because what's growing right now is not our economy, but our government. And the bigger the government gets, the poorer we all get because we have to support that government.
So they're like the drug dealer. I mean, that's all they're doing is supplying the...
We're addicted to cheap money, and they keep feeding the addiction, and we're going to overdose if we don't change. I want everybody to be taxed equally, and I want to lower the taxes on everybody because the money is much better in the hands of the people who earned it than the bureaucrats in Washington, because all they're going to do is use it to get reelected, and it's going to hurt the economy. Capitalism does work until government interferes, and the problem is the government interferes, things get bad, and then the government blames it on capitalism. It's not capitalism's fault. Government licenses the monopolies. Without government, monopolies wouldn't exist unless they were giving people the best possible deal.
How can you expect morals out of a society that was built on greed and hope?
Well, there's nothing immoral about greed. I mean, everybody wants things. But remember, in a free market, people are greedy, but they're also fearful. They want to make money, but they're afraid of losing money. The government comes in and subsidizes the losses. That's what lets greed cause problems when the government takes away the risk. If a businessman wants to maximize his profits without government help, without special perks, what do they have to do? They have to figure out what consumers want and find the most efficient way to give it to them. And the more you satisfy... They do. I deal with consumers who want my help. But yes, there are a lot of financiers who do nothing but speculate with money they get from the Fed on products that are insured by the government. That is not capitalism. That is destroying capitalism.
Why are you against unions? I just need an explanation.
Well, I'm not against unions. What I'm against is when unions have special laws that help enable them to extort money from employers and help drive them out of business. It's not a coincidence that all the companies that were heavily unionized are the ones that have gone bankrupt. The unions played a big role in bankrupting these companies. Ford Motor Company paid its workers more money before there were any unions, before there was any minimum wage. Ford workers who were on the factory lines got paid more money in 1914 than they do today, adjusted for inflation. Much more money. No, and that was because of capitalism. He paid his workers. I think you should give the average American a little bit more credit. People, I think, can make the best decisions for themselves. I think people can decide for themselves better than Washington deciding for them. I think people will make good choices. You know, people are going to shop around. They're going to look for a bargain. They're going to try to spend as little money as possible to get as much value as they can.
I mean, in a capitalist society, that's ideal, right? If you don't pay your workers,
well, actually,
on your P&L line, your employment costs.
Actually, I'll give you a little bit of history. Hold on.
That out,
slavery is bad business because slaves don't work very hard. It's much more economical to pay workers. They work a lot harder. As far as the minimum wage, all the minimum wage does is set a level below which people are not allowed to work. The minimum wage just destroys employment opportunities for the unskilled workers. You know, you can't hire somebody if they don't have enough productivity. There are people who don't have enough productivity to be worth $10 an hour. They don't. Now, a lot of them are young. They're 15, 16, 17. But you know what? If they can get a job at $4 or $5 an hour, maybe by the time they're 20, they'll be able to make $15 or $20 an hour. But they never get their first job because we've priced them out of the market. A voluntary relationship is not slavery. If I offer somebody a job and they take it, that's not slavery. They're free to quit.
What if they have no choice?
No, they always have a choice.
I mean, Nike, for example, okay, you say we can abolish the minimum wage, but we know how much Nike would be willing to pay people to make their shoes. They'd be willing to pay them 19 cents.
Look, Singapore has no minimum wage, and they have higher wages than we do, and no unemployment, and they have a booming economy. You don't need a minimum wage. How about this? You know, when your boss hires you, if he loses money, he doesn't come back and say, hey, you know, I had a bad month, I lost money. Why don't you write me a check and give me back some of your wages? But initially, the employer doesn't know if he's going to make any money. He has no idea if there's going to be anything left over at the end of the day. He has to pay all of his expenses, all the overhead, all the workers. He only makes money if there's any money left over. Nobody pays the boss. He pays himself.
Yeah, through his workforce. But
he
without, he has a workforce. So
no,
yeah, if the head of GE or whatever,
without the employer, there is no workforce. Somebody has to organize it. Somebody has to put it together. It's like he's the conductor of the orchestra. Right. Without the conductor, there's no music.
Well, no, he has managers that conduct it for him.
But who's running the managers?
Well, he is supposedly, but once you set up a company, after a certain point, it runs itself. It runs itself.
No, it doesn't.
And, yeah, it does. And all you have to do basically is sit back and take in the profits.
Oh, yeah. It's not as easy as you think.
So what is your answer to companies that pay bonuses to CEOs of companies that fail?
No, okay, now this is something you got to take up with the shareholders. See, the shareholders are paying those bonuses, and I think, look, I wouldn't want to own stock in a company that's paying out big bonuses to managers. So, but you vote with your feet. That's the shareholder problem. That money comes from shareholders. So what I'm upset about is when the government takes taxpayer money and bails. No, it's the shareholders. Now, some of them might be poor. I don't know who owns the stock.
It's not the shareholders or the board members.
Well, the board members are voting the bonuses, but the shareholders are approving the board. And the shareholders can sell their stock if they don't like what the company is doing.